a story, Oliver, that you discovered No Retreat, No Surrender when you picked up a VHS copy that
Hmm.
was a forefront home video release with the gold band around the outside. God, I remember those budget labels. And thinking it was a Jean Claude Van Damme film, but you were then surprised to find that it wasn't. So, how did you come about that? And then, what were your impressions? What impressions were left with you when you reached the end of the film?
So early 90s, Van Damme obsessed, so his movies were going pretty cheap on VHS, his back catalogue at that point, pretty around Universal Soldier Time or Nowhere to Run, sort of point where he's like Cyborg, Bloodsport, Black Eagle, ugh, awful film, didn't like that. Double Impact and Kickboxer, I've not mentioned that already. It's all going for like £5 on these kind of budget labels, either Warner Archive, Warner Selection or Collection label, and then there was No Retreat, No Surrender. And I saw this in, I think it must have been W.H. Smith's or Woolworths, and it was like 4.99. Van Damme on the cover. I've got to get that. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh, he's barely in the movie. At the beginning and pops up near the end. And I was of an age where if I was younger, because this must have been around potentially about 10, 11 years old. If I was pretty sort when I was younger, it would have had a more of a lasting impression on me because I enjoyed it for what it was, and the music was really cool. Because found out a number of years later that the UK version is the New World's Pictures cut, which has the kind of revised score and the song and an intro where you've got the kind of silhouette of Bruce Lee for the opening credits, and some of the other scenes kind of cut out.
Yeah, that's the version I saw initially when I first rented it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was kind of weird and a bit wacky, and obviously there was kind of shades of Karate Kid to it, but I didn't really kind of see it as some sort of knockoff of Karate Kid. Obviously, it probably had more in common with Rocky, and I found it kind of, and it was that time as well when I'd seen like Game of Death 2 and potentially another sort of Bruce exploitation type movie, and Bruce Lee was in it, and I was obviously like most people of that age were kind of obsessed with Bruce Lee. Once you saw Enter the Dragon, you're like, oh my god, Bruce Lee is like a real life Superman. He can just kick anyone's ass. So having to go to Bruce Lee in this was like, oh my god, this is really really interesting. Completely different twist on what I was expecting the film to be like. But it didn't really kind of like stick with me. Some of the songs would stick around in your head, but then you kind of move on to other movies. Obviously, Jackie Chan became really popular at that point on VHS because some of his movies from the 80s were getting released in the UK properly with like an English dub and stuff. Obviously, not Jackie's voice, but the dubbed voice of Jackie of that period. And I kind of forgot about it. I knew though that Karate Tiger was a thing in Germany and it had loads of sequels. That was a kind of like a funny trivia point, was like in Germany there was endless sequels to Karate Tiger, which was No Retreat, but they had nothing to do with No Retreat, No Surrender. It's just like the Kickboxer or King of the Kickboxers, Best of the Best, all just changed with a Karate Tiger with a number added onto it. So that was kind of an interesting kind of direction for that series. But yeah, it wasn't like I'd seen it and gone, oh my god, this is better than Bloodsport. I was like, well, I was all about Bloodsport at that age, but No Retreat was kind of an interesting kind of curiosity of kind of Van Damme's early career.
And Chris, what about you? When did you first discover the wonder that was No Retreat, No Surrender?
Wow. It was a long time ago. I think 2024 when this friend of mine contacted me and said, "Do you want to make a documentary with me? I've just met this crazy German who absolutely loves this film, and I need help making a documentary." And I was like, "All right, yeah, I'll check this film out. Why have I never seen it?" And I watched it, and I phoned Ollie back, and I was like, "Yes, absolutely. That was brilliant and really funny, and yeah, I'd like to work on it with you." And it's weird, man, because I grown up watching all the Van Damme films, absolutely loved it, loved all of them, but never come across No Retreat, No Surrender. So the irony that I should be co-directing a documentary on it now is ridiculous. But yeah, so I come at it completely fresh. So for me, I was like, this is awesome. I love Van Damme. I'd never seen it before. Really enjoyed the film. Made me laugh a lot. And the action was incredible. I couldn't believe how good it was for its time. And I was gutted I missed it. And I noticed the song, and I was like, I work out to this in the gym like almost every day. Do you know what I mean? That the No Retreat, No Surrender song is brilliant. So I was like, this is great. Now I know where it's from. So yeah, that was my story coming to it, and the rest is history.
I like the fact that we've got two very distinct outlooks and perspectives of the film. Oliver, it's been a part of you for some time and it's helped you appreciate Van Damme film more. And you've just sort of stumbled onto this and have instantly taken to it. So for both of you, then again, this time starting with you, Chris, in reverse order. What you mentioned the action, you mentioned the song that you recognise, but as a film, as a story, and some of the themes in it, and presumably you've seen both cuts, the international one
Yeah.
and the US one. What is the appealing factor, do you think, for this for you as a fan, as a filmmaker, but also do you think it holds for people who watch and enjoy and carry this film with them?
I think the real draw is the lead character, Jason. I think he's absolutely magnetic on screen, and seeing his rise to power, being trained by the ultimate martial artist there ever was, that that key staple in the story makes it brilliant and stands out from everything else. It's a really cool fantasy tale that no one else has tried and no one else has gotten away with, and it works. They pulled it off really well. And obviously, yeah, the best thing for me really was the action because I was very impressed with his kicks. Those spinning back kicks and the flying hurricane kicks were outstanding. I would have gone ape shit if I saw those when I was like, 12. It'd have been like, whoa, this guy's Ryu. He can actually do it,
What about you, Oliver?
Well, I think the thing I kind of realised over the years was that No Retreat was very important to people that were kind of bullied when they were younger. People that felt they were, couldn't stand up to, any sort of abuse or you know, had difficulty at school or whatever. Because people we've spoken to who were big fans of the movie. Even Scott Adkins, had that moment in his life where he was like beaten up, and he felt like a lot of these people felt like they were in the shoes of Jason Stilwell, who were going to sort of train and fight back. And it's just a shame there was no ghost of Bruce Lee to help them, along the way. So I think that the key element of the movie was that sort of people could relate to, of being bullied and fighting back, and the whole idea of no retreat, no surrender that sort of plays into it. And and it was also kind of a weird scenario where Kurt McKinney was such an incredible martial artist that who didn't go on to be a martial arts superstar. He just wanted to be an actor. So, you've got to give him credit for that, not just to sort of, hey, I'm just going to do these kind of action movies for Canon. He just wanted to work, and he found himself on TV. But yeah,
it's
no
a very
retreat.
interesting story, and we do go into it in the doc. We find out why.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually read somewhere that, and I don't know if it's true, that, and this is all pre-internet, that when Kurt McKinney was offered to reprise the role of Jason or to come back and work on No Retreat, No Surrender 2, Van Damme actually discouraged him, said, don't do that. You want to go for bigger things. But also, I think McKinney was due to get married after production. He said, go get married and,
I
move
think
on.
he had got married after the film, but beforehand, before the sort of it's all explored in the documentary, because we do cover No Retreat 2 and 3, mainly 2 because Cynthia and Matthias are involved, and it's me and Chris's kind of favourite part of the documentary because their stories are bonkers, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, Kurt was discouraged by Jean Claude because of the shooting location and what potentially could happen there. It was very risky. And Roy Horan, who was in Game of Death 2, amazing martial artist, had sort of been promoted to be a producer. So he had not gone about the process of approaching the actors the correct way. You're supposed to go through your agent, and he didn't do that. So, but yeah, that's kind of there. There's other little bits that come into play, but yeah, kind of this thing was Kurt was once he'd turned that down, he was offered to be in like American Ninja 3, 4, and 5,
Yeah.
which he going to be shooting in South Africa. We got apartheid and stuff, and he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this. Politically, it's not the right thing to do.
Kurt actually recounts the story very accurately, and Van Damme's very words to him on a phone call, which we won't repeat here. But when you see it in the doc, it is one of the funniest moments I've ever seen in the doc. So wait for it.
Okay. So, in terms of the ongoing appeal of the film as well, I mean, let's face it, the film is as low budget as you can get. It has some choppy editing in places. The bit that sticks out for me actually is the initial fight in Tom Stillwell's dojo, Jason's father, where he's not fighting Van Damme yet. He's fighting the headhunter Amal, and they're doing these really intricate sort of Shotokan karate moves. But at one point, they're sort of moving slowly, like traditional Hong Kong films, before they went into sort of the more urban, fast-paced style. And then all of a sudden, it sped up. They were sort of going like elbow, punch, block, and then boom, 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 boom. So there's some really choppy editing there. There's very grainy quality, and you've got obviously the microphone popping up every now and again. And I can tell you at which points they pop up, actually.
Was this on the old pan and scan tape? Was it?
This would have been on the original VHS.
So that would have been. I imagine probably it's an open mat, wouldn't it? They would have done.
Yeah.
Instead of a pan and scan, they would have opened up the mat. That's where we see some of the boom mics.
Yeah, because I don't recall. I don't recall in the version I watched.
Yeah, because it's widescreen. So.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I remember those. So the dojo scene, you can see them. If you watch an old pan and scan copy, you can see the mic, and also a couple of the instances where Jason and Bruce Lee are training. Occasionally, it just pops in, and then somebody realizes and pulls it out. It's quite comical, but it doesn't. What's interesting about it is that it's. I don't know how you feel, but the story is so encapsulating because you do relate to Jason. And did come out at a time when Bruce Lee was still fresh in people's minds, whether it was previous generation who grew up with Bruce as a teenager and then were adults, or like me, knew of Bruce's movies when I was 5 or 6 years old. Father took me to see them in the cinema in Iran because that's what you do when you're in Iran. You take your kids to see violent movies. And then as teenagers, you rediscover him on VHS. But there's nothing new aside from the Bruce rotation. And then here is a story about Bruce Lee coming back. So do you think the film, in many ways, in terms of its action, in terms of its storytelling and its relatability, was quite a groundbreaker or a game changer for martial arts films in the West moving forward?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Feel free to
Yeah,
jump in.
just merging the Hong Kong cinema with American actors. It just been done like once, wasn't it? On Enter the Dragon. That's
Enter the
sort of-
Dragon was that was a co-production between Golden Harvest and Warner Brothers, but had an American director, Robert Klaus, and American because Enter the Dragon is basically just a retooled version of Doctor No, but with Bruce Lee kind of kicking everyone's ass. And as Scott Atkins says in the documentary, Bruce Lee is mean in Enter the Dragon. He's not like a nice guy, once he jumps into action. But yeah, so there is kind of, you could argue that before No Retreat there was this kind of influence of Hong Kong cinema, but it was really an American perspective, but with kind of a mix of Western and Hong Kong money. And Bruce, doing the fight choreography, so we had that influence of the fight scenes, but his style was so different to what was happening in the 80s in Hong Kong cinema. Everything just gone really bonkers and like over the top. So I suppose No Retreat sort of encapsulates that sort of perfect moment where where the Western have kind of taken on what Hong Kong are doing, and going as far as having a Chinese director.
It's a great way of doing it as well, to have Bruce Lee there, because you're literally seeing the Chinese influence in the film. In a similar way to Enter the Dragon, having Bruce Lee, it's like they were the first ones to bring Chinese kind of martial arts into American cinema. And then we're having it mirrored again in No Retreat by Bruce Lee, bringing that martial arts in. And then the lead character even copying Bruce Lee. which was great for the
Yeah,
kids because
yeah.
that was just every kid at that age. So it was, yeah, supremely relatable. You can see why it did really well, and it's a shame I didn't see it back then. Shed a
It
tear.
it must have been a difficult film. I don't know if you found this out talking to Eun Si-yun and Keith and Kurt. Must have been a difficult film to make back then because Chinese or Hong Kong martial arts, or certainly sort of Asian martial arts style fight choreography, didn't always translate well. If you look at Cannonball Run, Battle Creek Brawl
Mm.
with Jackie Chan, although I love Battle Creek Brawl, it's entertaining and there's some good moments.
What's
Doesn't
Protector
translate.
as well, isn't
And
there?
there was the Protector, yeah. They don't translate well because Hollywood, even now, even though now it's embraced that style of fight action, look at the films of Chad Stahelski, for example.
Mm.
They had health and safety rules. They had union, obviously union regulations would not allow stuntmen and fight actors to do certain stunts. So there was all those protections. It must have been a very difficult film to get made, and either under those restrictions or to be able to circumvent them.
Hmm.
Well, they had issues with the cameraman. They had to replace him halfway, well, very shortly into it because he just couldn't keep up with the way they shot the fight scenes.
Hmm.
So they got a cameraman who had done like work for Fantasy 2, like effects, but he'd also operated as a cinematographer as well. So he would like exactly what they wanted because he appreciated Hong Kong cinema, so he knew how to sort of put the camera in the right place and do it quickly. Also, he had translation issues because Corey Yuen didn't speak English. Though Keith Strandberg spoke Mandarin, so he would be the sort of kind of directing the actors. Corey would say something to him, and you go, okay, and he'd just repeat. And then you had the guy playing Bruce Lee, who was from, I think was it from Korea? He's
Yeah.
Korean, so then you had his, you had to have a translation for him, and then also you have to speak phonetically in English when he's talking to Jason. But all Kurt
Yeah,
had to
so they gave
do,
him Korean words that looked like British words when he said them. So he could just make these shapes with his mouth and so that would fit with the dub.
yeah,
It's just mad.
yeah, it's mad because they also, famously, the Hong Kong filmmakers wouldn't shoot with sound. We would shoot without a script, just kind of make it up as they go, just
Mm.
spend all the time on the fight scenes. And that was kind of when the composer who had got the job, for the international kind of cut, the first composer on board, he had said, like, the producer said, "Oh, he was on a mono score." It's like, mono? Everything's in stereo now, like by 1984 or 5. So he was like, "Oh, well," he thought ahead and said, "I'm going to mix this 24 track and do that." So there is a stereo mix. That's when the soundtrack would come out years later. It would be perfect stereo sound
Mm.
instead of this kind of awful, really compressed mono mix that was kind of delivered and it's still on. It's still attached to the Blu-ray and DVD of No Trick System mono mix, and it's crying out for a sort of a remaster.
The whole thing seemed to be a bit of a battle, didn't it? What we learned from the interviews was that it was very guerrilla. They were showing up to places and just getting the shots and running around and renting out a flat nearby that they could run in and use the toilet and eat in, all the actors, and then just running out and doing the shots. And it was very, very guerrilla. And the
Yeah.
actors were going like learning the script, and then the next day it completely changed. So they were just trying to just giving the script on the day and trying to get on with it basically. And somehow it cut together well.
Yeah, it cost like $1 million. That was it, and NG, the
Yeah.
producer, just paid for it himself. And
Wow.
obviously, the film would be pretty successful at the US box office, but even bigger on home video. And it's doing the research, I discovered that when it came out in the UK in '86, it was only in the cinema for like a month. Then it came out on video. Now, if you think back then, Raymond, like the turnaround from cinema to video, rental video, was like what, 6 months usually?
Started off at 12 months, and then I
Yeah,
think by mid 80s, probably about 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
yeah, and you compare. I think maybe it came even shorter with Batman. I think with that upset rental stores because
Yes.
people could buy Batman on tape and rent it, and it annoyed them.
Well,
But
by the time Batman was released, tapes were selling for about 12.99, whereas
Yeah.
round about
yeah,
sort of right up to the mid 80s, if you wanted to buy a video, you had to pay something like £50, 70 odd pounds for it.
yeah, it's
Yeah, it was
mad, isn't it?
ridiculous.
There's old issues of Starburst. You go in the back, you can find Robocop in there, like 60 quid. I'm like, what? It's mad. No wonder people pirated stuff. But so that was surprising. Finding No Retreat came out on video in the UK a month after its theatrical release, and by Entertainment in Video, and found his old newspaper clippings, and it was a huge hit. And so that kind of started the ball rolling with them thinking, oh, we should do a sequel, because Keith Strandberg said they didn't really know the numbers once it had been sold, because it just been like went out there. No one told them how successful it was in each region. It was just kind of like once you started seeing, like, oh, it's come out here, it's come out there in Japan, etc. You kind of know it's found its audience, and I think I think Europe it just became just massive.
And half the actors didn't even know about the premiere when it happened.
Yeah, the US release. So like, some went to this kind of glitzy premiere, and others like, there was no premiere.
Yeah. Jason was just like, they didn't even tell me about the premiere, but there was some of the B-list actors there. They were all out there. He's like, what?
I think the reason why the release date was so quick on that, I mean, Entertainment in Video, EV, were known for a lot of their low budget stuff, and some of their titles got very limited cinema releases for about a week and then straight to video. But also,
that's probably why then. Yeah,
but this was also pre-multiplex, certainly in the UK, because Bristol. If you think about Bristol for a moment, back in the mid '80s, up to the mid '80s, it had an Odeon that was 3 screens. It had two ABC cinemas, one that was 2 screens and another that was a 3-screener. And then you had all these little a couple of independent ones, like a Curzon or the Gaiety, which was an old wartime cinema. So you didn't have the multiplexes, and you didn't have. How did you want to tell the story, and how did you want it to stand out from others? Being that there's so many out there now.
Yeah, I think later I think the first multiplex was like The Point, wasn't it? In Milton Keynes, was that one of them?
I think it was, yeah.
So no, because that did the sort of premiere of Rocky IV. So that was a big star-studded kind of event, and then Cannon had opened up one, I think maybe the following year, and I think even Christopher Reeve, I think, opened it with cutting the ribbon. But that's probably why it pulls into it was only on the screens for a limited time, and then went straight to video where they knew their market was.
Well, I think The Last Dragon was the same as well. Sorry to digress, but The Last Dragon was the same. It got a limited cinema release, probably in London where there's a ton of cinemas.
Yeah,
and
love to make a doc on that film.
Yeah, The Last Dragon.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what? You make it. I'll write about it, and we'll do the interview.
Awesome. I know Barry Norman reviewed Best of the Best 2. You can find a review of it on YouTube. It's mental, So they were getting, these. But action movies were getting more by that point. 1991 were, big deal.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the documentary then. And then we'll go on to briefly touch on No Retreat, No Surrender 2, because your long-standing passion for the film, Oliver, and your recent discovery of this gem brought you two together, and you collaborate with Sean David Lowe, whom you worked on the last Kumite, which I enjoyed, by the way. Really loved that. Again, it was another birthday present. So keep churning out these documentaries. I'm going to have Christmas and birthday presents to keep me going till I pop off, which will be not for a very long time. So keep it going, guys.
I'll quickly start, Ollie. We kind of have this setup where Ollie has a little more command over the story and the narrative, and I have a little more command over the visual style and the editing kind of graphics and energy. So that's where we came at it from. I was all trying to make the graphics right, trying to make the trailer feel right, trying to give it this energy and tone that matched the film, and just bring a lot of humor and a lot of levity and just a lot of energy. And I relied on Oliver's expertise as a narrative expert to kind of tell the story, and I facilitated that. So Oliver, how did you tell the story?
So because basically it was Sean's idea, right? Which you're probably aware of, because he's in Germany and
mega fan.
He's a mega fan, but he was planning a book. Obviously, he'd kind of prepared a lot of it already. He'd interviewed the people, discovered their stories, and so I was like, okay, he's done pretty much a lot of the legwork. But in the book, or what he kind of prepared, sort of this draft he'd created, there wasn't the sections about the kind of Hong Kong cinema, the Bruceploitation, as far as I remember, and then kind of a big chunk on the sequels. So it's kind of more about the film, the No Retreat, No Surrender 1, and the making of that movie. So to me, it was to structure it in a way like, okay, well, what's before No Retreat? Let's explore some of that because I love Hong Kong cinema. Right, I've gone through so many like commentaries in the past by Bay Logan. There's those, the amazing kind of kung fu documentaries they did on the BBC in the 90s. They were really good, and I've always kept up with it. I always, I read Impact magazine. I started buying back issues again because I'm mental. But so that was kind of my angles. Like, okay, let's explore the backstory of all this. Let's Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, go into Bruceploitation, then go into the movie, and then you've got the traditional kind of making of a film where people bring out their interesting trivia. And Chris had the bright idea, let's go shoot some shooting locations, where they'd filmed it. Obviously, some were kind of like you wouldn't recognize it, so we made a decision to say, look, what looks recognizable still from the movie, so you could do that A and B comparison. And from that point onwards, it's like, okay, well, let's talk to the composers. What interests me is the multiple cuts of the movie. That's always an interesting talking point. And then we weren't going to do the sequels originally. Sean, the producer, wanted something because he kind of figured out in his head how long he wanted it to be, but also you can't beforehand think, okay, we could spend 3 minutes on this subject, 2 on this subject, 5 on that. Never works out that way. If you do it that way, you don't know really what it's going to be at the end of the day. Once you've cut it all together, you make it as long as you can, and then just chip away at it. So the sequels weren't really going to be explored, but I thought we had to do it because if you're going to get Cynthia and Matthias involved to talk about No Retreat, well, you might as well get to talk about the sequel that isn't really connected to it in any way. And then the whole Karate Tiger 1 to 10 discussion with German fans was like ideal.
Hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite simple to structure, really. It wasn't, I'd probably say Here Comes New Challenger was probably a little bit more
Challenging.
but it was a bit more challenging in terms of timeline of events. And because if you're going to be exploring different versions of Street Fighter 2 and then the home ports, where does that fit within when the next one comes out and so forth? So No Retreat was very simple to sort of structurally to sort together. It was just more about how much time you would dedicate to each subject and what sort of information is put forward people will find interesting. Because there's always something in documentaries where, especially in science fiction, they're going through all the storyboards and, that stuff becomes a bit long-winded because you also got a subject on special effects where there's no special effects, So, but luckily, like, the casting process and the shooting process is really interesting. It's not just like, oh, the other bits surrounding it, like Hong Kong cinema and the sequels are more interesting. Everything kind of has a really nice balance, and that kind of plays in with Chris's style of editing, because I said to Chris beforehand, this film is really silly and it's funny and enjoyable. So I want you to sort of take that sort of editing energy from the saucy documentary about 1970s porn, and because those movies were comedy movies, and take that energy and put it into No Retreat and go from there.
It really did lend itself to it, especially
Really did, yeah.
Matthias's story is absolutely one of my favorites because I was lucky enough to get to go around and shoot. I think most of the interviews, it was about 90%. And to get to go meet Matthias was one of my highlights. And we had a big, long chat. I wish maybe one day in the future we'd do a documentary about his life because it is fascinating. But his beginning was No Retreat, No Surrender 2. And the stories that he's come out with about how that happened are brilliant, and we managed to get a fair few of them in the doc, but there's a big lead up which we couldn't fit in the doc, and he's talking about how he came over, shot, got offered the film, then when he shows up on set at when they were shooting, where was it? When they were shooting,
It was in Thailand, wasn't it?
was it Thailand? It was Cambodia. Was it
It was
Cambodia or
Thailand.
It
something?
might be something around there. It was just really dangerous, wasn't it?
And
'cause
when he
people,
shows up, half the cast that were there didn't even know that he was. They thought Van Damme was showing up. So when he shows up, they're like, What's this? It's not Van Damme." And we wanted a martial artist, and he had no martial arts experience. So there was a a big upset with that, and he had to train martial arts on set to be able to pull it off, and he did. And then once the film came out, he was almost living on the streets because oh no, once the film had finished shooting, he was back in the States and he was breaking into his old flat because he couldn't pay the rent. And suddenly the film came out, and once it came out, then he was back on the horse and able to sort of start working again. But there was this big period where he was just basically like fighting to survive and to make his dream a reality. And I love stories like that where people are just risking everything to, realize their dreams. So that was great, meeting him and talking about that. And yeah, and his parts, the No Retreat, No Surrender 2 is one of the best bits in this documentary. It's hilarious what Mateus and Cynthia went through shooting that film. I mean, they almost died and got shot and drowned and
Sounds
Yeah.
like a Jackie Chan film from Hong Kong. It sounds like the set of it. You hear his
yeah.
stories and Yun Biao's, Sammo Hung's, the injuries they've, the life and death situations they've been in. But yeah, oh, I can't wait to hear those stories. I'm absolutely fascinated. On the subject of Mateus, actually, he's a very fascinating persona. Just looking at No Retreat, No Surrender 2, because I always saw these two films as very archetypal of their time, rooted very much in sort of the Cold War tropes, if you like. So if you
Yeah.
look at the first film, it predates Rocky Four in terms of its production, but at the time it was hot off the heels of Karate Kid and Rocky Four, the whole East versus West
Mm.
confrontation. Even going as far as to call the Russian Ivan, although in the credits they call him Yuri. I don't know why that was.
Yeah. Bit of a mix up, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then you've got the second film, which is more like Rambo 3, Rambo 2,
Two, yeah.
maybe Rambo 3, because you've got the whole incursion into an Asian jungle. You've got the weaponry, the sort of bit of homosexual going on, a bit of gun porn going on there.
Yeah, it's
And then
definitely
you've got
Rambo
the
2, isn't it? Because it's
yeah,
like 87, I think number 2 is, but it kind
yeah,
of gets like sporadic kind of like release dates up to like 89. So,
yeah.
yeah.
But you've got this sort of heavy set Russian character, and he was fascinating because he was maniacally evil without actually being too cheesy. There was a genuine chill to him, and
Mm.
his style of fighting compared to everyone else. You had Huang Yang Li from the Hong Kong industry, super kicking his way in those two scenes he has and
Yeah.
standing out. You've got Cynthia Rothrock, who's fantastic. Lauren Avedon, again, fantastic fighter. And then you've got Mateus, who is not as fancy a fighter, but because he's this hulking military figure,
Yeah.
it is in retrospect, his style reminded me of Chuck Norris in Delta Force 2 when he's doing the demo with the other Delta Force members, and he's sort of putting them into locks and holds and throwing them and doing these very
It feels
simple
powerful.
but powerful movements.
Yeah.
I mean,
Matthias looks like a classic, like, end of level boss in a video
Yeah, I
yes,
was
game.
thinking M. Bison. I wonder if he inspired M. Bison. He has that kind of, his kicks were like M. Bison's.
so Oliver had the narrative, you brought the sort of the visual, and you've both brought the fan passion and everything. So, in terms of its structure, what I like about just looking at the trailer, I wrote down the names of the people who featured in the trailers. You've managed to secure quite a decent amount of the cast and crew
Mm.
of the films, given that they're nearly 40 years old. And, I mean, sadly, obviously Kent Limpam passed away several years, many years ago. Would have been interesting to have had him on, I suppose. There would have been a lot of amusing
Yeah.
stories. But you've
Yeah.
got a lot of them. And then also you've got people who, if you don't know your stuff, seem unrelated. You've got Scott Atkins, you've got Sam Furstenberg, and my mate Ross Boyask as well. I know Ross. I was very pleased to
Cool.
see him on there. But actually, their connection is Scott was influenced by Van Damme, so
Mm.
that tracks. Sam Furstenberg presumably would have worked with Kurt McKinney had he done American Ninja, and of course you've got Ross, who is an expert pretty much on all things martial arts and Hong Kong action, and has done. He did I Am Vengeance and I Am Vengeance Retaliation, those martial arts films, which are good fun. You should watch them, by the way. I recommend you check them out. So, and I suppose they bring the fan element to the recollections of the people who were there. Was that
Yeah.
was it? Were you? Are you? Do you try and strike that balance in the documentary? Let's get the stories from the trenches, but let's bring in the fan insights as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always good to have a fan perspective. I mean, there's got to be a fan that has, a lot of knowledge about that kind of, genre. And Scott is obsessed with No Retreat, No Surrender. It's one of his favorite movies. So it'd be foolish not to include him. And
Yeah.
Ross was a suggestion of Sean David, wasn't it, Chris? Because you got to interview Ross, and he
Yeah, it
gave
was
a really
great.
sort of in-depth, kind of very funny interview.
Yeah, Ross was actually one of the best speakers. He's almost had a script in his head. We'd go through what he was saying, and then he'd be like, "Oh, I messed that bit up." Go back like 10 minutes of the thing and go through it again. I'm like, "How'd you do that?" So he's amazing. Yeah, he was a great interviewee. I recommend him for every documentary. And Scott, obviously, because Scott is hilarious and his energy was perfect for this. We want Scott in every documentary we do from now on.
I think you should, and of course, Oliver, I think either you or Ty or both of you interviewed Scott for In Search of the Last Action Heroes, and he talked about the influence of martial arts films in his career and through his childhood. And that's the thing, I suppose, with this film and to some degree the sequels, is it impacted people's childhood.
Mm,
One thing I want to pick up on was about the reluctance of having the other two films. I suppose it makes sense featuring the other two because you've got the continuation of Corey Yuen bringing and Ing Se-yun bringing Hong Kong action to the West. Because if you watch No Retreat, No Surrender 2, you'd think it was a Hong Kong action film.
yeah.
Especially Lauren Avedon with some of this sort of almost
Oh
dynamic
yeah.
gymnastic style of fighting. I mean, that
Mm,
fight in the courtyard
mm,
is incredible. I would imagine he was doubled for one or two bits, but a lot of what he does was fantastic.
mm,
But you can sort of see the impact, I suppose, that you had this groundbreaking movie that suddenly introduced a new audience to Hong Kong action. You've got the impact of the follow up and the core players that are Cynthia Rothrock, Mateus, and of course Lauren, and then of course you've got the impact that led to three. This was its lasting legacy, I suppose. This wasn't just some low budget film that that crossed the sea and then sort of lit up the room and left. It lingered. It generated one film after the other and then greenlit a few careers along the way.
yeah, and let's not forget that they are really sequels in title only, which
In
is one
title
of
only,
a
yeah.
hilarious anomaly.
I
Because they have the subtitle for those sequels is the actual title, Raging
yes,
Thunder and Blood Brothers. Which
yes,
has got No Retreat 2 and 3. With
Yeah,
Scott and Ross both like their reactions to those movies coming out, seeing them is, oh, it's gold. It's like
yeah,
but again, it makes that whole chapter work so well
because
because
everyone's
they
confused. Like, what is it? Where's Van Damme? What he's now? Oh, where's Kurt? Oh, he's now, and then and then it gets to Karate Tiger, which is even better. That segment there, the Germans are just losing their mind because they've got 10 films,
I have
Kickboxer.
to admit, I read in Combat magazine at the time when these films were coming
Mm,
out, and then later on you had Kickboxer, and they were advertising these films called Karate Tiger, and there was sort of all in German writing. I thought,
oh, okay.
hang on a second, what on earth is going on here?
mm.
Why are they calling Kickboxer Karate Tiger? I think it is Kickboxer that's
Yeah,
Karate
yeah.
Tiger 2. And I think, yeah, it looked like over the years, I thought, okay, so they're just calling every Van Damme film Karate Tiger, low budget Van Damme for Karate Tiger. Every No Retreat, No Surrender is a Karate Tiger. It's a very, very weird franchise. And I'm so
Mm,
pleased that you included that in the documentary. You
yeah.
cannot talk about No Retreat, No Surrender and not feature Karate Tiger,
Oh,
which,
exactly.
I
yeah.
think Karate Tiger is more like the Marvel universe. I think that's the way of looking at it. There's some kind of thread, and maybe now someone could pull back all these actors and do an ensemble piece. Karate Tiger, Avengers.
It was like so weird, isn't it? Because so many like Italian horror films had different names, didn't they, in the US and stuff? And like it's classic with Dawn of the Dead, where it's called Zombie, the Dario Argento cut. So it's always kind of that. The 80s, it was kind of common for things to be retitled. Nowadays, that would just seem weird. But like it's like Lawnmower Man, it's called Virtual Wars in Japan,
Mhm.
or, or Speed translated to I think Fart
Fast.
in like in Denmark or some Swedish, the
Fast
Scandinavian
bus.
countries. It's called Fart.
What?
That means speed in their language.
Oh, that's
Who knew?
amazing.
Who
He's
knew?
wonderful.
I
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to see the poster with Keanu with fart
We
written
got to
under
find
it.
that
I
poster.
really need to see that.
I'm curious because at what point when you were putting the film together and doing your research,
Mm.
when did you learn that it was really big? The No Retreat, No Surrender film, the first one in particular. When did you learn that it was really big in Germany? And what was your initial reaction when you realized it was so popular there? I mean, between No Retreat, No Surrender and David Hasselhoff, one has to wonder where, you
Mm,
know,
the ultimate combination.
what is, yeah,
You'd have the
where do
whole
Germans get their
country
sense?
show up to a Comic Con if they
There's no
Exactly.
if they were
accounting for
spoke.
taste.
But what was the appeal for German fans, particularly? Why was it so popular in Germany? Did you ever find that out?
I
Yeah, when me and Chris went to Germany to film a number of the interviews and the reunion with the cast, that's when we kind of realised, holy cow, this is like really big, and the amount of people there turned up for a screening, it was like packed out, and everyone had
yeah.
their own little stories about it. And we interviewed one fan, Christoph, in the documentary, who had a sort of difficult upbringing and his emotional story. And I think it's just more about,
It
as I
saved his
mentioned
life.
earlier, about the sort of how Jason inspired him. I think that's where sort of the connection comes from for a lot of people. I think because of I think they were the dubbing in Germany was pretty good. Like not
Hmm.
like most dubbing in to English is always pretty ropey,
I
but they're
think
always
when there's
pretty.
dubbing as well, it detaches you from a film's quality in a way. It kind of
Mm,
like you can enjoy a film more for some reason because you're not seeing it in its quality that it actually is. You kind of
Hmm.
already know that you're separated. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
mm.
And I think that was definitely a part of it.
Hmm.
It's like when I grew up with like Jackie Chan when he was dubbed in English by a particular, maybe a couple of actors, like maybe City Hunter, Operation Condor, and what else around that sort of time, like Police Story 3 or something. But when Jackie dubbed it over in his own language, in his own voice, and speaking English, there was this like, oh, this feels weird now because I
Hmm.
was so used to like
Yeah.
that dub with the other guy doing Jackie's voice, who's a bit more high pitched, a bit more crazy, and Jackie's a bit more subdued in his voice. So it was kind of slightly off putting, and that maybe like that sort of I didn't not it's not to say I didn't find it as enjoyable, but it was like a bit jarring. But if you're sort of used to one sort of voice, and the German dub was pretty good, and that sort of the story of Jason being the guy who could fight back against bullies and so forth, that I think inspired a lot at that time, maybe. And also, it's just down to what was happening in Germany around that time, what sort of movies were being imported into the country, and what they could see, and I think maybe that sort of started this whole wave of like this was the action movies they really enjoyed. That's why they started doing these Karate Tiger 2, 3, 4, 5.
Interesting little factoid as well is that Sean actually managed to get some of the biggest voice dubbing actors in Germany to dub our documentary for Germany.
Wow.
That's kind of how
And I think he
popular.
might have got the original guy who dubbed
Yeah.
Jason back in the 80s as well. I think. I can't
Wow.
remember now.
Yeah.
There's some connection with the voice actors to the German dub of the documentary, which I applaud Sean for doing that because you wouldn't
Hmm.
generally do that. You just provide
Yeah.
subtitles. But I think the German market is very adamant of things should be dubbed.
It was very
So-
important to Sean, so we were like, yeah, sure, take half the budget. We don't mind. It's important. Pay these superstars. No, I'm joking. But yeah, no, it did happen. So yeah, I bet they're having an even better experience watching it in Germany.
Hmm. I'm sure. So, in terms of getting the cast together, then, I know when people are remembered for one thing, uh, maybe not so much Jean Claude, and maybe to some extent not even Keith or Kurt, and definitely not Matthias. But I think when a lot of people are remembered for one thing and one thing only, they tend to go one of two ways. They either carry that with them, like, yes, I've done this one thing and I'm absolutely proud of it, or they want to kind of forget about it because they said, look, I've moved on, I've done other things. Did you find that mix of reactions when you started approaching original members of cast and crew to take part in the documentary?
Well, I
And you
think
don't
you
need
might,
to name names, just the general sense of
I
the
think
reaction when you approach them.
they obviously what became apparent is they went through this journey of thinking the film didn't do great, it was just a little bit. And then in, recent years, they'd learned of the fandom because of the amount of, like, Sean, for one, approaching them and saying, you need to come to Germany, you need to meet the fans, and then them showing up there and having crowds of people delivering them so much love. So I think then it's become a badge of honor. Isn't that right, Ollie?
Yeah,
That's
I mean, Kurt McKinney, who had gone on to do TV stuff, he would still get fan mail from people, from other countries, wanting signed autographs, from signed poster, whatever. And then he also did that, a Kung Fu Monthly magazine in the 90s. People were like, where have you been? So he knew that it was a cult classic. I don't think he was blind to its kind of success, but I think the other actors were kind of like, oh, it's something we did and kind of moved on. Some thought it was very cheesy, didn't very, it's a cheap B movie and that's it, you move on. And some continued to be an actor, some didn't.
A lot of them didn't, did they? A lot of them
No,
didn't.
no. J.W. Fails. I mean, he did a few things, but you would have thought he would have had a bit more of a presence come into the 90s. You know what I mean? Because he was a
He
good
was
actor.
cool. He
He
was
was a
cool,
cool,
man.
cool
Yeah, he
kid.
was a
At
good.
the time, and he was part of the Canon group as well. He kind of worked within their remits. He had been in Breakin', so he
Uh,
was. He wasn't
Family,
out of
I
the
think
loop.
family took over his life, and he became paramount for him.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. So it kind of
Kathy,
happens.
Kathy just stopped, didn't she? That was it, gone.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and she just did that film. Was like that, I'm done. And she
Yeah,
could
she
have
because
gone
she
on.
got married, didn't she? And so she settled down. I think that's kind of the thing where being an actor is, I think, pretty quite risky at that point. It's kind of you got to be all in. If you're not, then
Yeah.
because Van Damme was all in. He was like, "I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to do this and that." And Mohammed Kissy was very much like that
Oh,
attitude where he just sort of recites what Van Damme was saying and doing, and
it's
you know,
hilarious.
yeah, yeah. So Mohammed Kissy, yeah, he's brilliant in it as well.
Mhm.
He has crazy stories about him and Van Damme flying over to
Can you
USA
recall the
and
story we didn't get to put in the doc with Kizzy and Van Damme, and they were like buying like a rotisserie chicken. They'd arrived in America, and they had nowhere to stay, and had no money, and they were just like stealing some rotisserie chicken from a supermarket. Got like chased out. We couldn't put that in. There's too much of a story, but it was really fun. And then they ended up sleeping on the floor in some dojo they found, like a kickboxing gym. And the guy opened up the next day and said, I might not be getting this all right, but I'm pretty close. And he said, what are you guys doing here? And they were like, oh, we're clean it if we can stay. And so he cleaned it. And then he saw them punching bags and stuff. He said, you guys are actually pretty good. And he let them stay. And then they kind of ended up eventually getting to this movie.
yeah, it
Was
was
it?
all just like because everyone read like a acting magazine or guy called Drama Log, where all the acting jobs were kind of advertised, and everyone was sort of No Retreat was it was called Ring of Truth at the time, and it
Mm.
changed to No Retreat, No Surrender. But as sort of going back to your original question, most of the actors were kind of aware of it, but they didn't really realize the success until they sort of you know were
Mhm.
in front of the fans and like, oh my god, you know?
Mm. The same with the musicians, wasn't it? Like Frank Harris, he didn't think anything
Yeah,
of it, and then fans were going, "What? This song's amazing! Can you release it properly?" And then he did, and everyone was super happy.
yeah.
He had
And
no idea.
Paul Gilreath, did the New World Pictures scoring because that did come out on CD by
Mhm.
Silver Screen Records, I think in the 90s. I think it then kind of went out of print, but he didn't realize how popular it was. Just down to I think his son had said like, "Oh, it's just like these songs are really popular on YouTube,"
Mhm.
and so he's done all right out of that.
Yeah.
I think.
And now on Spotify as well. That's the thing about as a kid, as a teenager, early 20, and a guy in his early 20s watching these films. I was frustrated because I couldn't find the soundtracks. If you were lucky, you
Mm,
could go into HMV and find an import copy. To this day, I don't know what
Wow.
that means. That maybe it was snuck in somehow, but it had this import label. If you were lucky, otherwise, what you had to do was get a cassette player, put it in front of the television, wait for the song to play, and then just try and stop it at the right point so you
yeah,
had the
yeah.
song.
I
And
did
now
that a few
you,
times.
yeah, and now you've got Paul Herzog's complete collection, Kickboxer, Breathing Fire, Bloodsport, all available on Spotify. You've got Paul Gilreath's soundtrack and Frank Harris's soundtrack, all on Spotify. It's incredible to be able to just, and with
Yeah.
its rising popularity as well, I would imagine they're doing quite well off of that, the number of plays they must be getting. What?
Especially as gym culture grows.
Absolutely.
You need more of that energy, you know? You need that power music.
Absolutely. So when you were doing the interviews, you were filming and putting the story together without giving too much away, because really people need to see the film to get the stories.
Hmm.
Were there moments that pleasantly surprised you, amused you, and genuinely shocked you into silence as you uncovered more about well, not just the first film, but all the films? And has that changed your perception and outlook of the films?
You want to go, Chris? Because you interviewed quite a few of them.
Well, yeah, it was a very much a journey of discovery for me because I hadn't done any research. I'd just gone to make sure I had a great conversation with the interviewees and learned. And yeah, all their journey was a lot of them was fascinating. JW, the way he showed up just to be in this film, and they were like, "Yeah, yeah, come and be in it." And he was like, "Oh, all right, great, great, yeah, sweet." And then suddenly he was whisked away on this adventure, making this film and doing breakdancing and stuff, and then not being invited to the premiere. I think everyone had some really funny experiences, which I think why this is why it kind of the documentary, the value of it came through as we were shooting it for me, just to hear their stories. Things that really shocked me was very much Matthias and Cynthia's story because, it was very much happenstance. She was doing this awesome martial arts demonstration with a team and someone saw it and she got interviewed on a news channel, wasn't it? Or mentioned on a
Yes.
news channel.
Yeah.
And Sammo Hyung saw it and suddenly was like, right, we need her in a film. And she was immediately a star and took to it like, fish to water, and then continued on. So her story was wonderful, a story of success, and this right at the beginning with this film. Um, Kurt, Kurt's story is great as well because he was just hungover and he wasn't even sure he was going to do this role, and he's just like he saw the advertisement. He's like, all right, I'm going to go. And then he showed up at the last minute, and they were just shutting the gates to the audition at the studios, and he managed to convince the security guard to let him through because they was like, "Oh, I think they've done all the casting now. They're only doing casting for the star." And Kurt's like, "Well, I'm gonna come and cast for the star." They were like, "You sure you look a bit old? It's meant to be like a young kid." He's like, "I can be a young kid." Got himself in there anyway, and they loved him. And they said, "Do some moves," and he did some moves, and that was it. He was away, and he nailed it. It's a lot of stories like that where they're just discovering, going on these magical journeys and like great things happening to them and them just going along for the ride.
There's a lot of
What?
like, everyone's had somewhat of a difficult journey to get where they wanted to be. Especially in the case of Matthias, always just kind of luck. You be there at the right time, and you sort of get in, and make a strong impression, and then their life is kind of changed. There's all there wasn't anything in particular that sort of stunned me. It was always just like, wow, that's fascinating. Especially how the sort of Van Damme, his enthusiasm for everything, but also, kicking people by mistake, and being told like, oh, you don't have to get that close. The camera will be there. It looks like
Yeah.
you actually hit them. Don't worry. And obviously, when we interviewed the fan who had a difficult upbringing and was inspired by No Retreat, that was a very emotional story because he spoke German. I didn't know he speaks English very well. Before he came in, Sean was like, oh, he doesn't speak English or something like that, which I know. Well, I found out he does. So me and the lads were like, oh, okay, well, we'll leave him to it. And then when Sean interviewed him, and then he started talking about his story, and then we kind of overhear things, and we were in the background, just sort of with Kurt off camera, and it was just like heart wrenching. Really got really emotional sort of moment. So that was like I was so glad we got that on camera, and as an inspired idea by Sean. And I think along the journey was me, Sean, and Chris. We did a really really good collaborative job on this. It wasn't just one person dictating everything. It was all like, let's throw this in idea, let's do this and that. And Sean had the idea while Chris was out in LA. Let's go to Seattle. Let's go to Bruce Lee's grave and recreate this kind of moment with Kurt.
Awesome.
And Chris did an incredible job shooting that. And
Yeah, Kurt had a little script in his mind, and I
yeah,
got to direct him at the grave, sort of reminisce. It was like shooting a mini movie with him again that was directly reminiscing No Retreat. So that was absolutely beautiful, and he was a lovely guy. And we went and had clam chowder for the first time. Yeah. At some port afterwards. It was great.
and
Oh,
because
lovely.
we had a tiny budget, but with these little moments, we got shooting locations, we got different locations to shoot, recreate stuff. It just increased, the production value of it all. It made it one step more above what it could have, what it may have been originally, which is kind of perhaps a somewhat of a straightforward documentary, but with all
Well,
the other bits I've thought of, like Chris has thought of, let's throw this in as B-roll stuff. This is going to make it look really good, and it paid off.
yeah,
You know,
and working with Sean was absolutely brilliant because he just like really encouraged our creativity. He's like, just let us go. And we're just like, yeah, making this, making this. Sean was just loving it. He was like a kid in a candy shop, seeing the edits come back, seeing the animations, the graphics. And I got to turn my garden into like a Chinese restaurant, which with a shot of the script, because we go back to when the script was being written, and we've got the original copy of the Ring of Truth script. So Sean sent it over to me, and I managed to turn my garden into this like little martial arts den with
yeah, because I went,
lightning.
we grabbed a typewriter, didn't you? Then I
Yeah,
went on eBay, found a Jeet Kune Do book by Bruce Lee
yes,
that was
some
a bit like
nunchucks.
been well thumbed through, so it looked like it'd been used. And there was like nunchucks we bought to sort of create this set.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
I luckily I've got bamboo plants in my garden, so I just shone a big light through that, got a smoke machine out, and it just had this kind of lovely little scene to it. And I love doing stuff like that. So that was great.
So, what stage you're at in terms of the film? Is it finished now? Is it all wrapped and ready to go, and you're just waiting for the? Yeah.
Totally.
all finished. We finished a couple of months ago,
Okay.
and now it's just a process of digital distribution that the producer's handling, and then preparing the Blu-ray, which is nearly done. Just kind of we're just sort of approving the Blu-ray file to make sure there's no mistakes in there, and then
Like there
that's a way
was.
to go out in January. Then we got the UK premiere, which we're having on 24th of January in Bristol,
Woo! It's gonna be awesome.
the mega screen, and then a week before that, they're doing the German premiere. So me and Chris will be out there to do that. And I said to the boozer Sean, "Oh, you're going to play it in English, but with German subtitles?" "Oh no, we're doing the German dub." I was like, "No," so I want to watch it, But I think that's why we got the UK one, so we can, enjoy it in its original format, But
Yeah.
but we are going to watch it with, in Germany with the cast before the German screening, so they can all enjoy it as well. How it's before it being seen dubbed. But yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's gonna be a blast, man.
I know you're promoting the pre-sale
Yes.
campaign. This will be your opportunity to give the film a plug and tell people where they can get their orders in and what lots of stuff they can expect.
So the Blu-ray is $26, pretty cheap for a independent documentary. You can get it from returnofclassics.com. I'm sure Raymond will put a link somewhere. We've got some extra features on there. We've got deleted scenes, we've got making of, we've got reunion section that was kind of filmed. There's a lot of like stuff that was filmed by an additional like camera crew that Sean had kind of hired to capture a lot of the the reunion of the cast in Germany. So there's a lot of extra stuff there.
And there's a
And
fantastic vignette of Oliver and I on set
oh
giving an
yeah,
interview on a day when
yeah,
Oliver was really tired, and I was like, "Where?" I was bouncing off the walls, and yeah, that's got some funny stories in it actually that you're going to enjoy.
yeah. That was a lot of fun. And so it's all out the 24th of January next year. It's region free, so you don't have to worry about any sort of region locking, and it's limited to 1,000 copies. So yeah, get it while it's hot.
Get it now! Get it now! Come on. Do it.
Can you do a Mateus impression, Chris?
No.
No,
God knows, no. I wouldn't dare, man. I have no idea. I can't, yeah. He's just a very soft, gentle giant. Love
he
that
is,
guy,
isn't he?
man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He saved me at the end of a very hard day. I had the hardest day of my career, I think, and to have interview him at the end just was beautiful because he talked about how hard his career was.
Okay, so just a couple of I say fun questions, but they are fun. I'm not going to probe deep into your journey as filmmakers. I've done that. So you can have a bit of a rest.
My ass hurts.
I bet. So some people won't know, but by now most people do. There are two versions of No Retreat, No Surrender. There is the international cut, and then there is the US cut. I think it's the US one that has the opening that Oliver described earlier with the Bruce Lee poster silhouette and the
Yeah.
sort of almost Zen-like stoic panpipe music, and it's Paul Gilrath's soundtrack, and then you've got the one with Frank Harris and the international cut. Interestingly, I think makes more sense. The story follows chronologically, but each of you, please tell me of the two cuts, which is your favourite and why? Start with Oliver.
Oh, it's a tough. Okay, yeah, the international cut makes more sense because they trim things out, and I think there's like lines missing about his relationship with the girlfriend who he kind of met in, I think the summer before, and I think some of the bad guys get kind of trimmed out as well. So things kind of don't make narrative sense in the US cut, but the US cut kind of polishes the intro with the opening title sequence, and some of the music by Paul was actually pretty good, orchestral wise stuff, where it kind of fits a little bit. It's a bit more moody in places where Frank's is a bit more crazy, a bit more pop, as it were. But it's so difficult because both of them have really good songs for the montage. But I'd probably go international cut.
Okay.
Yeah, because Stand on Your Own is a great track, but
Yes.
I think the international with Frank is Frank Harris's score. It's probably the one for me. Because it's weird because my initial experience is the US cut with Stand on Your Own, and it's a shorter version. But because that time had passed so long, and not refreshed myself, I've just been so used to the international cut. Because when you're editing the documentary, you're just going to use the longer cut anyway, and just kind of put those bits in. I mean, we do provide comparisons between the two, to sort of show people visually what's different. But I think I've been so used to the international one, just kind of, and listening to the music so much, it's just kind of that's the one I kind of prefer.
I think you've just described how I felt when the first time I watched the new Rocky 4 director's cut. Drago versus Rocky, where he put some scenes back in,
Yeah.
recut some. It just didn't feel like the same film, and you've got to watch it a number of times to appreciate it, and then you come away thinking, oh, yes, okay, I might actually like that one a bit better, but I actually don't. The original cut is my favorite. But Chris,
Now, I want to chime in on Rocky 4 actually, because
go on. No, go for it.
because
Yeah.
I just went and saw the new cut at the cinema and I really appreciated some of the elements, but one thing I really didn't appreciate was the new cutting of the end fight because I thought they'd lost some of the impact on that end fight, and I think it was way better in the original. So I would sort of take the beginning and splice the end of the old one on, and it really made a huge difference for me. Didn't feel as impactful. I thought that's it was edited way better for impact and pace originally, and now trying to put more stuff back in, they'd lost that.
And
That's
they
my personal.
and Stallone decided to make it a 2-3-5-1 movie. Just added borders to it, which is really weird. Like you cropped off some of the footage.
Yeah, you put a letter box,
You know.
So Chris, No Retreat, No Surrender. Which cut? International or US version?
I have no idea. It's all blurred into one for me. It's just become one cut, and I've edited the shit out of it, so I have no idea anymore. Um, But it's for me, it is the score, and I even though Hold On to the Vision's great, I love Stand on Your Own. That's my gym song, so I'd have to give it to that. Is that the
Okay.
international cut?
No, it's US cut.
Right, the
US
US
cut,
cut.
yeah.
Give it to the US. USA.
Okay, so across the series of films, then, name me some standout moments. We'll start with you, Chris, because we started with you first initially, Oliver. So, Chris, I don't know if you've seen the second and third films, but what are some standout moments for you in terms of, action choreography, lines delivered, scowling performances? Just give me like a sort of a
Um,
top three.
I've only seen a bit of the. So we're talking about the sequels, or
All of them. Obviously, the first one, because that's the main topic. We
yeah.
want at least one or two out of that, and then maybe a couple from the
I got it.
sequels,
I'm
depending
I'm
on
an
what you've
action
seen.
fan. I'm an action fan, so I've got to give it to Van Damme's helicopter kick at the beginning. That just blew my mind, and then Jason Kurt's spinning hurricane kick. Like that is
Mhm.
still when he does the double one. I was like, that's still one of the best kicks in cinema to this day. Perfectly orchestrated, and then the fight with Huang and Cynthia
Mhm.
in the second film that I
Mm.
absolutely loved. So those are my moments. It's all about the action. It's all about the action choreography, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, number one, it's Van Damme's speed in that is just phenomenal. You're seeing him fight in a way you don't generally see anymore because I think he's hungry for work, so he's really good at like, and also he's doing with a Hong Kong crew, so he's the fight choreography is a little bit more elaborate, a bit more interesting. Where once Van Damme starts doing his own choreography, it's a lot more simple. It's still impactful at the time, but it wasn't like you look at like Death Warrant
Well,
and
that
then
was
look at no,
impactful because of the editors.
yeah, double impact. One kick equals four. But
Yeah.
like it was, but if you look at Double Impact or Death Warrant compared to No Retreat, Van Damme's so much quicker in No Retreat because the other films use a lot of slow mo. Those and obviously the end battle in No Retreat's really good with Jean Claude fighting everyone going through Pete Cunningham
Mm.
and so forth, taking them out. Um, but number two, it's just pure bonkers because it takes everything up to 11. And it's obviously being very, very Rambo. But yeah, the fight with Cynthia and, as Chris had mentioned. But I love the fight with Lauren Avedon and Matthias. That's really intense. Because it's just so funny because Matthias bursts into that room. He's like, where is he? You're like, looking for him. He's like a spider. Lauren Avedon just comes down and like kicks his ass. And the third one's really good. But like, the crazy fight in a warehouse. Like fighting across this plane and like this kind of scaffolding and stuff. It's pretty mental. I think those are good moments. Number two was like it's on a motorbike, just jumping over cars or tanks, whatever, and Sonic's
Yeah.
flying in the air. It's
Yeah.
there's so many crazy moments, and the acting is all a bit hammy and cheesy. And the actors kind of like reflect on that, being it's all a bit cheesy. And Cynthia's just like just reciting her lines, just the camera, not really. You know, it's not as convincing as her fighting, but that way.
Remind me of Japanese anime, the kind of the way the script goes and the acting. You know what I
Yes,
mean? It's
all it
that.
needs is a bit of huh. As they always put in anime.
It sounds to me like you've uncovered this film has a legacy on many levels that I don't think people will appreciate until they see the documentary and hear the
Mm,
stories of the
mm,
fan who had such a hard time. Mateus's literal rags to riches story,
mm.
and so on. So it really does have an impactful legacy, doesn't it? For on so many levels for so many people across different generations.
Mm.
Was
I
that one
think
of the?
without a doubt, anyone who loves this film will absolutely love the documentary and have the time of their life watching it. And I also think that the documentary is so fun and interesting with martial arts films in general and filmmaking in general that even if you haven't seen the film, you're going to really enjoy watching it, which is what we
Yeah,
wanted to achieve.
yeah, definitely. Because there's some documentaries you can watch without having seen the film, and still get a lot out of it.
Mm.
And I think this kind of works that way because No Retreat is not a complicated story. The
No.
plot of it, the synopsis, and it's kind of told in the documentary as they kind of discuss the shooting process. So you won't be lost. I think it's a very easy thing to follow and a lot of fascinating stuff. And if you are a super fan, you're always going to encounter trivia that you may have heard before because you're a super fan. That's why you are, because you end up knowing too much than most people. But there is, I think, structurally and the pace of it, it doesn't get bogged down. It just moves along at a great pace. We're very conscious of that, and to keep the energy levels high and keep the entertainment high. So I think it won't. It's not a basic in terms of trivia. There's a lot in there, a lot of stuff in there. So it doesn't. You won't feel shortchanged by the end.